Hello. I'd like to take a few minutes to discuss a subject that is becoming critically polarizing in today's ever-changing world: water rate fairness in Southeast Michigan. We will review the recent status quo, compare the Detroit region to three other Great Lakes water systems, provide a brief overview of the brand new Great Lakes Water Authority, and finally show that we have a tremendous need to provide water rates regulation as the only possible method of yielding fair water rates to 40% of the population of the state of Michigan. My name is Bob Cushman and I live in Northville Township. I'm a mechanical engineer by education and have worked in engineering, sales engineering, and aviation for over 40 years. I believe that both engineers and pilots are, by definition, problem solvers. A few months ago, my bill-paying wife alerted me to a significant increase in our water bills. As you might expect, I began to investigate the reasons for this increase. As I dug deeper into the evidence, I began to uncover a much broader issue. This was not a problem localized to Northville Township, but rather a systemic problem that touches all of Southeast Michigan. The Detroit Water Department is about 2 centuries old and has grown to become one of the largest water systems in the United States. It is crucial to understand that this water system provides water for 40% of the population of our Great Lakes state. It is important to note that water rates were regulated by the state of Michigan from 1967 through 1995. The Wayne State Law Journal tells us, quote, "The relationship between Detroit and the suburban communities it serves has been contentious for decades, with suburban representatives questioning how water and sewer rates are developed and how the funds are subsequently spent." The case was assigned to Judge John Fikens, who was given judicial oversight of the Detroit Water and Sewer Department for more than 30 years before he retired in early 2011. The case was subsequently transferred to his judicial colleague, Judge Sean Cox, unquote. Systems that provide water to cities and regions are monopolistic in nature. It is not fiscally possible to have competitive water systems competing for a homeowner's water needs. Because of this stark reality and the possibility of predatory water pricing, price regulation has generally been applied. Michigan required the MPSC to regulate water between 1967 and 1995. To begin to talk about water distribution, we need to think of the Detroit water system as a pyramid with three levels. The top level is the Detroit Water and Sewer Department. The middle level is comprised of 83 cities and towns, and the bottom level is comprised of about 4 million citizens receiving that water. It is important to make this distinction because the interaction between the Detroit Water and Sewer Department and the 83 cities and towns is the focal point of this discussion. The water bills that you as citizens receive are a result of the interaction, but an apples-to-apples comparison is not possible at the local level. We will define the interaction between the Detroit Water and Sewer Department and the 83 cities and towns as the upper transactional zone and keep our focus there. This was done to maintain an apples-to-apples comparison of water rates. None of our discussion will apply to the lower transactional zone. Detroit sells its water at a retail rate directly to its citizens. Detroit sells water to its 82 suburban entities at a wholesale rate. Detroit also charges its suburbs an additional fixed rate. In order to maintain an apples-to-apples discussion with available data, we will be focusing on the variable wholesale rate to its suburban customers. There are 82 communities that buy water from the Detroit Water Department and resell it to the residential customers. This is a listing of some of the higher cost communities. The lowest cost community pays $2.75 per 1,000 cubic feet, with many communities on the east side of town paying between $4 and $7 per unit volume of water. Perhaps your community is up on the screen. The middle value also known as the median, is $9.66 per unit volume of water. The numbers were taken directly from the 2014-2015 wholesale suburban water rate schedule provided by the Detroit Water and Sewer Department. I began my investigation by finding out what information was available online, information that would allow for an apples-to-apples comparison. I decided to restrict my search to water regions in the Great Lakes area to dispel any unique problems that other parts of our country may have in obtaining water or transporting water. When a realtor wants to list a home, he or she begins an appraisal by comparing similar homes of similar characteristics. Likewise, when an HR professional wants to fill a corporate position, he or she will seek out similar jobs that require similar experience and find out what starting pay is appropriate. This process is called a comparative analysis, and that is a method I use to compare the Detroit Water Department to its counterparts in Cleveland, Grand Rapids, and Milwaukee. One of the first characteristics of our comparative analysis that became apparent was the overall complexity of the Detroit rate structure as compared to the other three water departments. Detroit has 83 water rate zones as compared with 2, 4, or 6 for the other city water regions. Keep this complexity difference in mind, as we will refer to it later. The next major difference was the extreme bandwidth of the rates. In order to continue an apples-to-apples comparison, I opted to use a ratio of the highest cost water rate zone to the lowest water rate zone. The result was that instead of only having a maximum of 30 or 60 or 80% more for the most expensive rate zone, Detroit had a water rate zone that was 900% more than the cheapest water zone. I should point out that all persons associated with structuring water rates seem to agree that the farther from the source of the water and the higher above the source of the water that a community is, the greater the cost should be. However, in this case, the devil is in the details. It would seem that Detroit has taken a generally accepted truism and distorted it to great lengths. This has resulted in some communities paying far more than their fair share. In order to better graphically represent the disparity in the super-wide rate structure of Detroit, I used this Excel graphing tool in an attempt to make this disparity easier to visualize. In the case of Detroit, we can make a qualitative statement that communities to the left of the center line are paying far more than their fair share, while communities to the right of the vertical line are paying far less than their fair share. This is the essence of the unfair water rate structure in southeast Michigan. I rearranged the 82 communities in order of the cost of water and then added a column to compare the cost of water versus the per capita income as reported by that community in the 2010 census. I found a fairly good correlation between per capita income of that community and the amount that Detroit Water Department charges that community. While this is not proof positive that the per capita income was the basis of the cost of water, it does give a casual observer reason to pause and wonder. The finalization of the formation of the Great Lakes Water Authority was accomplished on June 12 of 2015. The Great Lakes Water Authority will have 6 voting members to include Wayne County, Oakland County, Macomb County, the Governor's Office, and 2 votes for Detroit. Of special concern is that the Great Lakes Water Authority formation involved closed-door meetings and gag orders. This was done, allegedly, because of the relationship to the Detroit bankruptcy. Macomb County Executive Mark Hackle was very upset with U.S. District Judge Sean Cox. As such, Mark Hackle was excluded from some of the meetings. This veil of secrecy and gag orders flies in the face of public transparency. One of the critical failings of the structure of the Great Lakes Water Authority is that Detroit alone will have control over Detroit's water rates. How can we possibly have water rate fairness and parity when Detroit alone will control her water rates? Think of a magnetic compass rose, then think about competing interests where Brooks Patterson will be pulling for lower water rates to the northwest in Oakland County. Mark Hackel will be pulling for lower rates to the northeast for his people in Macomb County. Detroit Mayor Duggan and Wayne County Executive Warren Evans will be pulling to the east to push for lower rates for Detroit. Can you see any real representation for Western Wayne County? Does anyone think that this piecemeal, regionalized approach could possibly yield a fair and homogeneous water rate structure? The following is an excerpt taken from the Detroit News on June 2nd, 2015. Quote, Oakland County Executive L. Brooks Patterson said Tuesday his Macomb County counterpart, Mark Hackel, risked being shut out of a deal on a regional water authority for his continued fighting outside closed-door negotiations. Excuse me. Mark has sort of taken himself out of the negotiations on this very vocally, Patterson said Tuesday morning on WJR's Frank Beckman radio show. If I'm setting up a party, I'm going to invite a bunch of people who want to get something done. I'm not going to invite the guy who's already said, I'm not interested, I'm not playing, unquote. During the course of my research, I became aware of a major player in Michigan public utility policy, Dr. Janice Beecher. She has a PhD in political science from Northwestern University, teaches at Michigan State, is the director of the Institute of Public Utilities, and delivered a dissertation on public utility regulation for her PhD. In 2010, Dr. Beecher published a paper titled Water Pricing Primer for the Great Lakes Region. She stated that good policy should, quote, avoid excessive complexity, unquote. Cleveland, Grand Rapids, and Milwaukee have accomplished this benchmark. Detroit has not. She stated that, quote, overpricing suggests that the utility is providing transfer payments to another entity, including local governments, unquote. Can there be any doubt that the current Robin Hood approach to transferring wealth is being applied to communities in the Detroit water region? Dr. Beecher further stated that protecting captive customers from the abuse of market power is the basis for water price regulation. The ultimate truth is that state-provided water regulation is the only method that can possibly produce fair, homogeneous water rates for this natural monopoly. I believe that we have shown that the current rate structure, water rate structure as administered by the Detroit Water and Sewer Department, is anything but fair. I also believe that it will be impossible for the Great Lakes Water Authority to provide a fair and homogeneous water rate structure. The leading experts agree that natural utilities such as water are a monopoly and must be regulated in order to attain fairness and transparency in water rates. My state representative Kurt Heise has reintroduced a series of bills that he indicates will yield a fair and homogeneous rate structure. My state senator Pat Kobach is also beginning to give this matter his attention. I therefore ask you to contact your state representative and your state senator and ask them to provide the proper legislation to return water regulation to the Michigan Public Service Commission as it had been for several decades prior to the last 20 years. I thank you for your time and attention.